Hello, everyone. It's finally that time you've been waiting for. Good evening and welcome to the Rare Book Room. My name is Nicholas, and I help direct the events here at Strand Bookstore. For a little bit of history, the Strand was founded in 1927 by the Bass family over on 4th Avenue's Book Row. Stretching from Union Square to Astor Place, Book Row gradually dwindled as big box stores, Amazon namely, and ebooks took hold. After almost 90 years, Strand is the sole survivor, still run by the Bass family and still housing new and used books, including some in this room from the 15th century. That's pretty cool. Tonight, I'm excited to welcome Rhett Miller to the Rare Book Room to discuss his new book, No More Poems. Rhett is a singer-songwriter known for fronting the popular rock band Old 97s. Between projects with the Old 97s, Miller has released 6 solo albums, most recently 2018's The Messenger. In addition to his songwriting, Miller has branched out to write fiction and nonfiction. He's authored short stories, essays, and articles that have been featured in Rolling Stone, Bookforum, Sports Illustrated, McSweeney's, The Atlantic, and Salon. Please join me in welcoming Rhett and No More Poems to the Strand.
Oh my God. Hi, you guys. Hello. Wow, I did not expect mostly grown-ups. It's really sweet. Hi, thanks for bringing your kids. Oh my gosh, all right. Well, I anticipated explaining a lot of things to little people, but in lieu of that, here we go. So my name is Rhett Miller. I'm normally sing in a rock band, but I have just started writing these poems, and a lot of the poems came from my own interactions with my kids. And they are not songs. Like, I am not a children's music person at all, but it was explained to me that I'm more valuable if I'm holding a guitar. So here I am. But there is one poem in this collection that started off kind of as a song. There were only 3 words when I first wrote it because the kids were little and I was trying to get them to sing. Oh, thanks. Don't worry about it. And so when I started, I know this is not amplified, so you just can hear it. So sometimes I would bring my guitar into the bathroom, and while they were taking baths, and there's a certain age at which kids can just all take baths together. Like, it doesn't matter. It's what's been explained to me. It's when they're really young. But so I would sing, disco bath party, disco bath party, disco bath party, disco bath party. So if you sing that enough times, it becomes really catchy. And I did. In fact, and then there's a number at which it becomes really annoying, and then it becomes funny, and then it becomes just like white noise. So we reached all those points. So when I was putting together this book, I wrote one of the poems using that song as a template. So it would go, disco bath party, grab a disco ball, turn off all the other lights and waka 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 waka. Disco bath party, disco lights flash. If you got no disco ball, just flick the switch real fast. Make a lot of bubbles, use bubble bath or else. Eat some beans for dinner, make some bubbles for yourself. Woo! That's an example of what they call in the industry potty humor. Disco bath party, got it going on. Point your finger at the sky and sing a disco song. Make a lot of noise, put bubble, got water on the floor. Ignore your daddy when he says don't disco anymore. Woo! How long should we stay here? At least a half an hour. When we get out of the bath, disco in the shower. Oh, yeah. That's another thing when you're writing a kid's book. A lot of it's based on the rhymes, right? So whenever you hear the word hour, you know the word power or shower is coming right up. And then it wraps up like this. Disco ain't for old folks, disco's for the young. Until the young get sleepy, then the disco party's done. Thank you very much, yeah. All right. Now, I'm not here in my capacity as a rock and roll god. I'm here to read poems for children, and tonight for y'all. So it starts off with, remember the industry term potty humor? Well, that's right where we start. It's pretty sweet. This one's called My Secret Karate. There's a type of karate I specialize in. I invented it all on my own. No one has witnessed my secret karate. It's meant to be practiced alone. I stand on my left foot and raise my right leg, using muscles in abs, thighs, and tush. And with just the toe of my special blue sneaker, I make the toilet flush. I toggle the lever, or mash down the button, or lean on the handle just so. That way my fingertip never gets yucky, thanks to the skills of my toe. Courtesy's something my mom always taught me, starting when I was a kid. So using the toe of my special blue sneaker, I lower the seat and the lid. My secret karate is practiced in private, in public bathroom stalls. I don't mean to brag, but my balance is awesome. I never touch the walls. I don't have a name for my potty karate. I might call it Taekwondo. Or maybe I'll say I'm a third-degree black belt in the top secret art of Kung Fu. Thank you. Yes. You don't have to have right, I had chosen poems based more on the idea that there were going to be kids here. And I understand that my my status as an emerging children's author might account for this. And also, if you Googled me, you see I'm primarily meant for adults in the past. And also, there's the severe weather event that's happening outside right now. So I'm gonna read a poem that's got my favorite illustration. We landed this illustrator named Dan Santat, who is pretty much the best in the world, and I'm not exactly sure why he agreed to do it, except that he's got excellent taste, and he was free last summer for a month. So this one is called Hairs. Nose hairs are gross hairs. We all know it's true. Ear hairs are weird hairs. They're pretty gross too. But when one long hair grows from a mole on your nose, man, I feel sorry for you. Now, there's one thing that happens when you're putting together kids' poems. You have to be really careful about the idea of shaming, right? Because and also when you're just a human being living in the world, you should be really careful about that. But I have a giant mole on my face, so I figured if I'm ever going to make jokes about something, it's that. My kids make fun of it constantly. Speaking of which, this one is called My Manners, and this is very much inspired my own children and their inability to try very hard to show respect for their elders. I drink my soda pop and burp. My manners are a mess. I never say yes, ma'am, or sir. I say uh-huh, or yes. When someone asks, would I want something I don't think I would, I never say, no, thank you. Instead, I say, I'm good, but am I? Really? Am I good? In some ways, sure, I guess. But one thing's undeniable. My manners are a mess. Thank you. Thank you. All right. I'm going to skip the writing a poem with the kids part because there's only one kid that can talk. You know what? If it's all right with you guys, maybe I'm going to go to the poems that are a little more on the slide. There were some poems that, not that we had to censor anything necessarily, but you just had to make sure that they didn't go too far. But definitely there's some poems that push the boundaries. And it wasn't always the poems themselves. In some cases, the illustrations pushed the boundaries. There's another poem in this book about a bath. And in the poem, all sorts of people are in the bath together, but in the illustration, one of them was upside down and their butt was showing. So we ended up having to put a bunch of bubbles on the butt because it was like a full butt, and I was like the whole situation. So that's a little behind the scenes for you guys. All right, this one airs on the side of being a little bit darker. And also, since I'm giving you guys behind the scenes, I'll tell you that one of the things I really love about writing these is that I was able to play with the idea of the unreliable narrator. Like in these poems, I'm sort of inviting the kids who are reading them to look at the person who's speaking and make up their own mind whether or not that person is telling the truth, whether that person has a realistic self-image, all that kind of stuff. So this is one that does just that. This is called My Twin. I'm not my twin. My twin is my twin. He is who he is, and I am not him. Mom says she loves us exactly the same, which doesn't make sense. He's dumb. He breathes through his mouth. He talks with it full, a mile a minute with never a lull. He wishes he was as clever as me, but too bad for him. He's dumb. I was here first 5 minutes before. I'm wiser because I've seen so much more. He'll never catch up. He'll just tag along. What do you expect? He's dumb. He built a rocket out in the yard. I could have done it. It isn't that hard. The thing barely made it out into orbit, proving again he's dumb. Accepted to college 7 years early. They must be confused. They wanted me, surely. An honest mistake. We do look alike. The big difference is he's dumb. Now, I can do math, like adding and minuses. His math's all messed up with X's and Y's and stuff. My grammar good. His words be confusing. They must be made up. He's dumb. I'm not my twin. My twin is my twin. He'd like to be me, but I'm glad I'm not him. It takes a big brain to be nasty as me. He's always nice. He's dumb. Now, if ignorance is really bliss, like they say, no wonder I'm miserable all the dang day. My twin's always happy and smiley and laughy. I rest my case. He's dumb. So, thank you. Oh, good. You know what? Since we are mostly grown-ups here, I can do some of this stuff. This one is called How to Play Baseball, and it's based on a real person, and I'm wondering if he'll ever realize it was about him. But he's still in our lives in the rec league in my little hometown, an hour and a half north of here. So this is called How to Play Baseball, and you can see from the illustration that there's a grown-up who doesn't seem like he's handling his position very calmly. All right. You hang out on a diamond wearing PJs and a cap. Sometimes you might catch a ball and folks politely clap. Sometimes you don't catch a ball and some folks might get mad, especially the scary coach, Joe Maroney's dad. And he's screaming and he's stomping, spittle flying from his face. He's kicking up a dust storm between home plate and first base. It's like he never dropped a ball, never made an error. The kids all pray for rainouts because the coach is such a terror. Poor Joe's on the mound right now. He'd quit, but he's no quitter. He tries to sneak a fastball past the other team's best hitter. The bat emits a crack-a-lack that makes your whole team wince. The ball sails in slow motion far beyond the right field fence. Coach Maroney points a stubby finger at his son. You throw one more meatball, kid, and you, my friend, are done. Normally, at this point, poor Joe's eyes well up with crying. Today, there's something different, though. Joe's eyes are dad-defying. Coach don't seem to notice, but the kids all sense a thrill. Joe don't look so poor no more up there on the hill. A mom off in the bleachers whispers, "What a piece of work." A dad says even louder, "That Maroney's such a jerk." The ump, a local high school kid who's getting quite an earful, is trying to look tough, but only ends up looking tearful. So, here's how you play baseball with a bully for a coach. You hang out on a diamond, wishing storm clouds would approach. Poor Joe is a peaceful kid, but gosh, he looks so tough. He winds up and delivers his most heavy-duty stuff. Joe Maroney sends one flying towards his old man's head. Turns out it's a curveball, and it hits the dirt instead. Eyes as big as baseballs. Coach is staring at his son. Joe yells, "Lighten up, Dad. Us kids want to have some fun." Son comes out. Coach sits down. His face is kind of gray. We all pound our mitts and smile. We've got a game to play. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. That one was one of the ones that borderline, it's on the darker side, but I had to work with my editors because there was an original ending wherein the coach didn't fare so well. Like, it wasn't a curveball, it was a fastball, and I think the phrase was right between the old man's eyes. But I like where we wound up. I think it's going to fit into school libraries a lot better. So yeah, I'm really happy to be here, and I'm excited to do a little Q&A. And I could read these all night. Like, I don't even know how long I've gone for. You know what? Since, like I'm saying, I'm reading the ones that are a little on the more risque side, as we're all grown-ups here, except for these cute little kids back here. This one's called Brotherly Love. And you can see that even though this poem was described in one review as being having violence of Cain and Abel sort, in the poem, in the illustration, the train track to which the little brother is tied, it's a toy train track. Everything's fine. Everybody's going to make it through this poem, so don't get too scared. Please don't push your brother out the window, little miss. I know he's asking for it. I am quite aware of this. But if you push your brother out the window, he'll go splat. And once he's squished, there isn't any coming back from that. Please don't drown your brother in the bathtub, sweetie pea. He can be a twerp sometimes, I know. Believe you me. But if you dunk him 3 times and he only comes up 2, the cops will be all over us. There's nothing I can do. Now, if you take a pillow and you smother brother's head, I've got a strong suspicion that he just might wake up dead. Or worse, he'd be a vegetable. Oh, bitter irony. He hasn't eaten one of those in his whole history. Darling little girl, I know exactly who they'd blame if you go pouring gasoline and setting him aflame. You're much too young to shoulder such responsibility. I'm the one they'd cart off to the penitentiary. If you tie your brother to an active railroad track, I'm the one they'll take away, never to come back. Feed your brother poison, maybe drop him down a well, and I'm the one who'll wind up living in a prison cell. And so, I beg you, honey pie, ignore your dark desires. Maybe give his dirt bike a couple of flat tires. Or if he's by a swimming pool, give a gentle shove. But please, my angel, show a little brotherly love. Thank you. Thanks. One more, okay. All right, I will, you know what? I'll wrap it up with one that, it's an illustration that I really love. This poem's called The Wise Man. And Dan Santat, the illustrator, in this cranky old wise man, in the illustration, in his pocket, he put a copy of a book by Bukowski. So it's a good little detail. I don't know that the 5 to 10-year-olds are going to pick up on that, but like 7 years later, they're going to be all like, Bukowski. So, all right, this is called The Wise Man. Way up on the mountain, there's a hairy little man, and if you want a question answered, he's the one who can. You start up in the morning, you climb all afternoon, and by the time you reach his cave, the only light's the moon. You think that he'd be lonely, but really he's a grump. His fingers grip a walking stick. His back is one big hump. He croaks, "You get one question. You better ask it quick." And suddenly you have to pee. Your tummy's feeling sick. You're sure you had a question you thought about all day, but now your tongue's all big and dry. You don't know what to say. Your mouth is stuck wide open. Your lips move up and down. You're making all these crazy faces. You can't make a sound. Your belly gives a rumble. Your bladder's feeling full. Where you used to have a brain, your head is stuffed with wool. The old man lifts an eyebrow, his face a furry mask, and cups his hand behind his ear to hear what you might ask. The hairy fellow says, "One question, kid, don't spoil it." You hear your voice come squeaking out. "May I please use your toilet?" Thank you very much. And so we end where we began, with the potty humor that is going to make us all rich someday. They have it set up where if you'd like to ask any questions, you can walk up to the mic and ask them. I don't know. Is it okay if they just yell it out, or do
we would prefer to record them?
Oh, because they're capturing it for posterity.
Yes. I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Okay. Question. You said you have 2 kids, and I'm wondering if you used your kids as like a sounding board, as an editor. Did you run all your poems past your kids before you decided whether or not to put them in the book?
That's an excellent question, because it gets to the root of the whole reason I wrote this book, was because I was trying to get my kids to think I was cool. Like so many things that I find myself doing in my life, it's really just to win their approval. But I would call up from the rock and roll tour, and I would read poems to them to get their opinion on the poems. And they wound up being really great editors. They gave me a lot of great feedback. I didn't give them any author credit on here, but I've told them that when I die, they can keep all the money. But yeah.
So it's kind of like working with your band.
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. Thank you.
Hi, I heard your poems when you read them at City Winery recently,
Oh,
so
yeah.
that brought us here tonight. I teach kindergarten in the New York City Department of Ed, and would you like to set up a class trip to read?
I would love that.
Okay, we'll talk afterwards then.
Little Brown
Do
Young
that.
Readers.
There
Yeah,
you go. Very good. Great.
Yeah,
Thanks.
please. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got one.
Okay, good.
What's your next project that you're working on, whether be it kids book or otherwise?
Wow. I now have this ongoing project of a podcast that I'm recording, because apparently we live in a world now where anyone in the arts has to have a podcast that they host. And the Old 97s, my band, is about to go in and make another record, so I'm writing for that. For the last 30 years, I've been working on long-form fiction. So I'm currently deep into the first draft of a piece of long-form fiction. And I've really enjoyed doing this so much that I think it's something I'm going to keep doing. I don't know if it'll be poems or longer children's books, but I'm excited to be in this world, and I really love it. Thanks for asking.
Well, I found these charming. Does anyone else have a question?
Oh, yeah. It's funny. So much. So the question was, do I approach songwriting and writing poems the same way? So much of what goes into the making of poems like this is meter and rhyme scheme and rhymes, and I really love those components. It's really different because when I write songs, I tend to do it very stream of consciousness, and I am just stream of conscious. What is? Yeah. So I just go off the cuff, and I just sort of follow the muse, and I try not to think about what it's about. But when I write the kids' poems, I actually kind of get into the idea of who are the characters, and I really try and find the story in a way that I never do with songs. Songs, I kind of want to build more of an imagistic feeling of what it's, the world that you're living in. And with the kids' poems, it's nice, I feel like, if there's a relatable, realistic world, but I really want more for the character to be realistic and for the story to hold together. Oh, yeah.
Greedy and ask 2 questions. The first one is, based on your experience thus far, what do you think the biggest differences are between the music business and the publishing business?
Well, the publishing business hasn't yet collapsed, which is great. Whereas the music industry about 10 years ago went away. I really like the publishing business because and this may not be true. I feel like maybe there's a world in publishing that is different from the young reader's world, wherein there's a value to mystique, to like building up this aura about yourself that sets you apart from normal human beings. The music business is all about that, and I feel like that's getting better, and maybe it's going away. But it's historically been a situation where if you want people to think you're brilliant, you act poorly, you treat people poorly, and I really have found in my dealings in the publishing industry so far that people tend to be intelligent and respectful and kind. I think there's something to be said for living.
Forgot beautiful.
But it's like a life of the mind, versus sort of a visceral standing on a roof screaming, "I'm a golden god."
And my second question is, can you talk about any poets or poetry that you loved as a child or as an adult?
Yeah. So the reason that the reason I wound up wanting to do this for my kids or to my kids was that we had just been reading a lot of Shel Silverstein, and then we got into Edward Gorey, and we had always read a lot of Roald Dahl, the novels, and although Roald Dahl has some novels that are not meant for children. Just be careful. Maybe just, skim ahead about what you might be reading your kids. But so those were three obvious ones. The one that I don't know that a lot of people were fans of that was a main influence on these poems was a Harvard professor in the 1950s by the name of Tom Lehrer made a number of kids records, or no, not kids records, I'm sorry, specifically not kids records, but they were like Dr. Demento novelty albums. And so his albums were really goofy. But there was one in particular, I just read You Brotherly Love, wherein the dad begs his daughter not to murder her brother. There was that was sort of written in response to a Tom Lehrer song called The Irish Ballad. It's written like in the form of an old Irish ballad, but it's all about all the ways that a daughter killed off all the other members of her family. So it was really dark, like way too dark to even be in the world of like children's stuff. But since the only kids here are now gone, I can tell you. She drowned her brother in the well. For a week the water tasted like hell. We had to make do with gin. So it's that. But so you can see why the kids' poems that my take on them is a little more subversive and a little darker, and it was good. My editors did have to rein me in a little bit and explain, 5 to 10-year-olds can only handle this. They can't, so I'm grateful that I got as much leeway as I did, but also I'm grateful that I got the guidance to rein it in when I needed to. There are some outtakes that at some point I might like to share with people, but maybe I'll save those for the grown-up ones later. Did you have a question?
Yeah, it's kind of based off that. So you have good potty humor in this book, and you have potty mouth humor, perhaps, in your rock shows. I was wondering what you're thinking about as you go on book tour with kids, how that's are you gonna play those two personas apart, or worry that your children's book might bleed into the rock show? I would be worried.
Right. Well, it's a weird thing because for one thing, I'm going to go do a lot of like librarian conferences and then school appearances. And I thought this was going to be my first appearance. I imagined coming here tonight and having wall-to-wall kids. I was thinking like, well, so in New York City they don't put their 5-year-olds to bed at like 7:30 or who knows. So they're just up till midnight, like watching Manhattan or whatever. So no, it's not. But I was thinking about that a lot ahead of time, and I was like, oh my God, I hope I don't cuss, and just like the things that pop into your head. But so I am going to be spending a lot of time standing in front of large groups of children, and I'm just going to have to trust myself that I don't have Tourette's. But it is nerve-wracking, and I'm also a little nervous that the librarians and/or teachers are going to Google me ahead of time and not realize that people are multifaceted. I can put out an album that has an explicit lyrics warning on the front of it, and then I can also put out a kid's book that's not going to completely mess up your kids. I mean, it might make them a little bit more free-thinking and maybe a little bit talk back more than they might. That's the way I've wound up affecting my own children. They roast me constantly. Well, thank you guys all so much for being so kind and gentle and for not bringing your kids. Oh, that would have been horrible.